Welcome to another episode of the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights show. We are an agency who investigates allegations of discrimination for employment, housing, and public accommodations. We also provide training and civil rights laws and relevant topics. So today I have two guests from the Lincoln Housing Authority, and we are here to bring you some information on how to better understand what that agency does. So I would like to welcome Amy Wagner and Judy Schaefer. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you took the time to be here with us, because I think Lincoln Housing Authority does an awesome job. But some of our community members might not know what you do, right? What the agency does. And so please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Amy Wagner, and I am the Senior Family Self-Sufficiency Coordinator at Lincoln Housing Authority. So I'm part of the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, where we work with participants in our voucher program, our public housing program, help them work towards any employment and homeownership goals that they might have.
Awesome. And Judy.
I'm Judy Schaefer. I'm a housing specialist, and so my responsibility is the families that are already approved for the programs, and I'm redetermining their eligibility at least once a year or every other year, depending on their qualifiers.
That is awesome. I know that the majority of the people probably know that Lincoln Housing Authority provides Section 8 vouchers. And so would you be so kind to kind of, whichever would like to explain a little bit more to our community, what are Section 8 vouchers and how does that help our community with housing?
I'm going to let Judy take that one. She's the expert in that one.
Yeah, sure. Section 8 is a federal assisted program. We call it Housing Choice Voucher, but it's known as the formal name Section 8. And so what that helps is families subsidize their rental assistance or the rental amounts.
Right.
So it's based on their income and some other qualifiers, but it gives them that opportunity to have some help and support with rent as they're going through some challenging times. And they use the program for as long as they qualify.
So if somebody wanted to apply for that program, what are some of the steps that they would need to take?
They first need to submit an application for our waiting list. All of our programs and properties have waiting lists. Right now, that Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is a little less than a year. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, we just got some new information out this week that we're selecting more and more off that wait list, so it brings down that waiting time. So as part of that process where they're waiting on that waiting list, it's a good time to start getting familiar where their important documents are, like their birth certificate, social security cards, knowing how to get a hold of their financial information, like their income and their assets, to kind of get ready for that interview when they come off that wait list.
So is there, and I know this sometimes comes up when people have asked me about how they qualify for LHA, is there, does Lincoln Housing Authority look at credit score?
That's a good question. For our rental assistant programs, no. But for our properties, when we're trying to make decisions if they're just going to rent one of our rental units, we do look at credit score and their rental history.
Can you please describe your rental properties? Because I think some people don't realize that you have two programs going, right?
We have multiple programs
correct.
going,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Right.
Talk about our properties.
Yeah. So we also have the public housing program, which is something that's also subsidized too, but those are our properties that we manage through HUD. And then we also have our own properties that are scattered throughout Lincoln. There are tax credit properties, there's properties in South Lincoln, there's also properties out in Arnold Heights, and so we have several properties located throughout Lincoln Housing Authority that they can apply for. In addition to, we have 3 elderly high-rise buildings, Crossroads Houses downtown, right at 10th and O. We have Burke Plaza, 67th and L, and then we also have Mahoney Manor in the Havelock area. So we have so many more programs than just that voucher program that are out there.
Yeah. I don't think people realize that it's
right.
not just a Section 8. You've
That's
got
right.
so much more to Lincoln Housing Authority, so I appreciate that. I know Amy and you and I have worked in the past quite a bit. Will you please let our community know what one of the programs that you do, or LHA does, is RentWise. And I found that some people don't realize the benefit of going through RentWise. Will you please describe that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So we coordinate the Lincoln RentWise Network, and what RentWise is an educational series of 6 different modules helping tenants become better renters. So throughout those classes, they're learning how to communicate better with their landlord, how to communicate with their neighbor. They're also learning how to budget, how to find a place that's going to be safe and affordable for them. They're learning about the rental process, going through that lease, going through that rental application. We talk about fair housing issues. We have wonderful speakers from Lincoln Commission on Human Rights come and speak to those participants. We also have they also learn how to take care of their unit, and they also learn how to get out of their unit, going through that, giving a notice to move, those types of things. And so by learning all those things, the goal is for tenants to become better renters.
Yeah, like renters' rights and responsibilities.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That is
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yep.
How does one go about signing up for RentWise?
So they can sign up. There are different agencies in Lincoln that also offer RentWise, but through the Lincoln RentWise network, commonly people are filling out a registration as they complete an application for our programs. But they can, if they're working with any agency in town that has those registrations, they can fill it out and then they send it in to Lincoln Housing Authority. We get them entered into our information, and then we send out a notification to them to inform them of what class that they're scheduled for.
Awesome.
They can always contact Lincoln Housing Authority to get that registration if that's something that they need. They can also find that registration on our website too, as well as they can find the application for our properties and programs on that website too.
That is great information. Is there qualification for RentWise, or can anybody take that class?
Anybody can take RentWise. Even if you're not in the city of Lincoln, you can take RentWise classes. Yep.
So the times that I have gone into present at a RentWise class, I always find it interesting the amount of information that each of the participants receives. And I was like thinking, why didn't we get this like even in high school? Because I think especially like juniors and seniors, there are so many students who are going to be on their own and really don't know what rights and responsibilities are when you're a renter.
Yeah.
And the things that you should and shouldn't do when you're renting, right? So I always find that program to be awesome.
We get a lot of positive feedback for our RentWise participants that at first it's like, oh, I got to go through these education classes, but by the end they're like, this was the most helpful information. I tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
And so whether they're trying to help their application for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, having that RentWise preference is another reason why some of our participants are going to sign up for that. But ultimately when they go through it, they just have a lot of really good information to be a successful renter, and they really recommend it to other people. So it's really good feedback from the mentors who teach it too. Yes. They do a really good job.
Yes, and I always enjoy watching some of the videos because you're not just letting them know, like you're showing them these are some of the things you should do and should not be doing with the property. And I'm sure landlords also appreciate that educational piece, right?
They do.
To be able to take care of their properties, aside then when if they're in any of the programs that Lincoln Housing Authority offers. Wow, you guys have done such an awesome job. I so appreciate that. But with RentWise, another question that I usually get is, will it help with people who have felonies? And I know that's a question that it comes up all the time. And while there might be a couple of programs out there that do have people who have felonies, does the RentWise help with that at all? We
don't help with that specifically. It's just providing that information, that education. And so we do talk about fair housing during one of those modules, so it does inform them of their rights and what they need to answer, have to answer, how do they fill out those applications. We do provide them guidance on if they do have a criminal history, what they can do to enhance their appeal as a tenant without obviously lying, but just telling their side of the story, telling what happened. So we just encourage them to advocate for themselves.
Right. Wow. And Judy, tell me, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I think that's one of the myths that people have is I'm not going to qualify for housing because I have a felony or I have a misdemeanor or I have some kind of criminal activity. And I always encourage people to still apply so we can look at that, because it may be a situation where it's only temporarily disqualifying them, because we do look at a 3-year history of when that last charge occurred. And so it's a possibility they could get feedback from that application to say you may not qualify now, but you might in a year. So we always encourage people to still apply for our programs and our properties so they're getting helpful information about our processes.
That's very informative.
There's a lot of myths out there, a lot of misinformation about who can qualify, who can't. So
Yes.
like Judy said, we just always encourage them to apply.
Yeah, that is true. There are a lot of myths, and I don't always have answers, so that's why I like RentWise, and I do encourage people to take RentWise, because I'm amazed. Like, I wish some of the things that RentWise teaches I would have known when I was renting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, now, is RentWise offered in other languages?
We do offer a Kurdish class, and we also offer an Arabic class. And then if a participant is requesting an interpreter, we have funds to help provide that as well.
Yeah, so I have gone also with the Arabic
Okay.
one, which is kind of awesome, because as you're speaking, and then they're translating and interpreting.
Yes.
So, aside from that, what other agencies are involved in giving that RentWise class?
So we partner with agencies such as Friendship Home, Community Action. Oh my gosh. We also partner with
Do you partner with Matt Talbot?
Matt Talbot offers their own classes, from my understanding.
Very
So, and then we also partner with Centerpoint. They have their additional classes, and then they can send some referrals to our class as well.
Wow, a lot to do at Lincoln Housing Authority. It's not just about Section 8,
That's
Right.
right.
Because I think that's everybody's misconception. It's just about Section 8, but there are so much more. Judy, please tell us a little bit about the different properties that are around town. Because as Amy described, she said that they have the Section 8 or the federal housing, but then Lincoln Housing Authority has some properties around town. What are the ones, or first of all, is there a waiting list for those properties? There is
Yes,
also.
absolutely. We have approximately 1,400 rental properties scattered
Oh.
throughout Lincoln, and
Thought
we're
there was
in
only
process.
4 or 5.
Well, combined units through all of our properties, and we're in process of building another apartment complex on the south of town. So that's really exciting.
It is exciting.
So yes, we do have waiting lists for all of our properties, but again, we always encourage people to get on those waiting lists because they can move pretty quickly, averaging 3 to 6 months waiting time. We range in size from 1 bedrooms up to 5-bedroom units. So again, we always encourage people to apply for our properties because you never know, they might qualify for what Amy was describing earlier, a tax credit rental property, which is a little bit reduced amount of rent. It's not subsidized, but it's still based on income. So you might pay $100 less for that property. So a lot of opportunities for affordable housing out there through our agency.
Wow, that is so cool to hear. Have you, and either one of you can answer this, have you seen an increase, with our refugee and immigrant population? And obviously you have to qualify for the program, but have you seen an increase of the need for housing for refugee and immigrants through LHA?
There's been a lot of applicants, and we obviously see that there's just more affordable housing needed for everybody in Lincoln. So there just needs to be more safe, affordable housing out there. Also, there is a need for more housing providers to be willing to work with Lincoln Housing Authority as well and accept our vouchers. And we offer incentives to landlords if they're interested in joining the program. So we try to accept as many landlords that are willing to work with us.
So go ahead, Judy.
I was going to say, I think that's another myth that's out there on the landlord side of it, that the paperwork can be overwhelming and challenging, or the inspection process that they may not want to go through. So I had a conversation with a landlord once who had some misinformation about that process, and he was considering renting to someone who was approved for the voucher program. So he asked if he could come into the office to speak about what what's required of the landlord side. And it was a great opportunity to kind of bust a myth with him as well, because really the upfront paperwork with the landlord is to set up a direct deposit with the preferred account that they want that money or that payment to go into.
Right.
And then they sign a contract to receive payment from the housing authority, and that's really all of the paperwork is upfront. Then the next step is getting that unit inspected and passed, and we're really making sure that everything works properly, it's safe, it's secure, and it's a clean, decent home to live in. So he did provide feedback that that was a really easy process for both the paperwork and the inspection, and remained a long-time landlord.
Good.
So that's really what we want to encourage, is more landlord participation. We have incentives built in. We give them a one-time bonus for taking on a Section 8 tenant in one of their properties. And we also have the direct deposit for them to get their money quickly on the first of the month. And we're available to help and answer questions when they have challenging tenants. We're going to help them walk through those processes.
I am so glad you touched on that, because I was just about to follow up. Tell me about your landlord program. And it is true. I mean, I think Lincoln, right now is lagging on the affordable housing. And obviously, Lincoln Housing Authority is doing their part to make sure that people do have housing. But then also, kind of like, this is your time to plead for those landlords. Like, please consider, partnering with Lincoln Housing Authority. I think that is so important, especially some of the bigger families. I think there's always a lack of those bigger apartments or homes that they can use that you might not have access to.
Right. Absolutely. A family may be eligible for a 5-bedroom voucher, but trying to find a 5-bedroom unit out there is
limiting.
It's very,
very limited. Yes, it is. If you wanted our community to know anything about housing, well, first of all, what would you like them to know, and how can our community best be supportive of Lincoln Housing Authority?
Well, as Judy mentioned, I mean, it's good to know that anybody is eligible to apply for our properties, for our programs, and if you aren't eligible, then we let you know that. And if you aren't eligible right now, you may be eligible in the future. So as Judy said, it's just good to know that. So I just encourage people to do that. And as we talked about, it's just not about the voucher program. And even if people are in that voucher program, there are support services in line for people in all of our programs, including our voucher program. We have support staff, we have housing specialists who work with them on a regular basis. We also have a tenant services department, which is the department that I'm in, and we're there to provide support and information and resources to folks who may be just needing some additional support, some information, some resources. So we aren't just the voucher program. As I mentioned, I'm in the family self-sufficiency program, so we provide support and support to help them get their employment goals, get their home ownership goals. We also have some home ownership programs as part of Lincoln Housing Authority. We partner with Lincoln Northeast High School every year to build a home. So we do have that home ownership opportunity. So there's just a lot of programs out there that we provide.
I've been to some of the homes that you partnered up with Northeast High School students, and they're beautiful homes.
They are.
And it's amazing how much the students learn as they're building this home for a family in need to have affordable housing. So I've always enjoyed attending those open homes because then you get to see the family and how they're enjoying the new home, but then also the partnering with the rest of the community. So that has always been an awesome part that I like about housing, Lincoln Housing Authority. One more thing, pardon me. Amy, you talked about your family self-sufficiency program, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really the goal is to let people know, to get people back on their feet if possible, and eventually getting off the program. Talk a little bit about your family self-sufficiency program. I know you touched on it a little bit, but the importance of that program.
So it's a voluntary program. tenants in our voucher program and our public housing program are eligible to be in that program. It's a program they can be into for up to 5 years. During that time, we develop goals to help them work towards their employment goal, full-time employment or whatever their employment goal may be, and they can also work towards home ownership. So we can offer assistance to help them go back to school if that's something that they're interested in. We can also help with other things such as car repair or other support services to help them meet those goals, to help them work towards that employment. Also, while being in the program, we do offer them a savings account. As their income increases during the time that they're in the program, their rent is going to increase. By being in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, we do match that increase in rent and deposit it into a savings account every month for them. And then when they graduate, when they complete all their goals, they are given that check at the end. And the average balance is about $4,000. They can use it for whatever they want, whether it's to help with a down payment on a home, pay back debt, just whatever they need that money for. There's no obligation for what they use it for.
That sounds incredible.
It is. It's a little hidden gem.
It's a great program.
You also have, is there a waiting list for that one as people come into the program?
So right now we offer 2 waiting lists, one for our public housing program, which essentially isn't a long waiting list at all. And then we do have a waiting list for our voucher participants. During the pandemic, our waiting list dropped a lot. People just weren't getting the information, so they weren't applying to be on that waiting list. So we do have a waiting list, but right now it's about a 2 to 3 month wait versus a couple years ago. It was like 1.5 years to 2 years.
Wow.
So now's the time.
So no kidding. So anybody who's out there and wants to know more about this program, I think you better reach out.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to be here and educating our community, because there are a lot of myths about what Lincoln Housing Authority does, Section 8, landlords. We could really use more landlords to be a part of the program and have that assistance to be able to help more families. Thank you, Amy and Judy, for taking the time to be here today. I think the information that you've provided for our community is great. It's awesome. I mean, we needed to hear that. And so if there are any landlords out there who have listened to this, please reach out to the Lincoln Housing Authority. So thank you both for today. And with that, their information will be at the end of the programming. So if you'd like to reach out to them, their contact information will be at the end. And with that, remember, we all have rights.